I want to start by acknowledging something that I think nobody has said to you clearly enough lately. And I need you to actually let it in when I say it, because I think you've gotten very good at nodding along to encouragement without actually receiving it. You've learned to smile at the right moments and say thank you and move on without letting the thing actually land. So I'm going to ask you to do something different today. I'm going to ask you to just stay here for a second before we get into anything else. Before the cards, before the energy, before any of it. Just stay here. You're tired. Not lazy tired. Not I don't care tired. Not the kind of tired that a good night's sleep is going to fix. The specific kind of tired that only comes from holding on for a long time when you weren't even sure that holding on was the right thing to do. The kind that comes from watching people around you seem to get the thing you've been quietly working toward while you're still in the waiting room, wondering what you're even waiting for anymore. The kind where you are still showing up every single day, still doing the things, still choosing to believe on some level that this is going to shift, but there's a part of you underneath all of that forward motion that is genuinely deeply exhausted by the effort of continuing to choose belief. When belief keeps asking so much from you without giving you anything visible in return. I felt that before I pulled a single card. I felt it the moment I set the intention for this reading, and I am not going to rush past it the way most readings do. Because I think that rushing is actually part of the problem. People hand you hope without first sitting with how heavy the waiting has actually been. And when that happens, the hope doesn't land properly because there's no real foundation under it. It just sort of floats on top of the exhaustion without actually reaching you. So I'm going to sit with you in the actual reality of where you are right now before I show you what is changing. Because something is changing. Something has already changed, and you don't fully know it yet. But before we get there, I want you to feel actually seen in what this season has cost you. The waiting has been heavy. It has been genuinely, honestly, unfairly heavy in a way that you have probably not let yourself say out loud, because saying it out loud feels like complaining, and you're not someone who complains. You're someone who keeps going. But the weight has been real, and it has been sitting on you for a long time, and you have carried it without putting it down and without quitting. And I need you to understand that those two things together, carrying something heavy and not quitting, are not ordinary. Most people either put the weight down or they quit. You have done neither. You have carried it and kept moving, and that is going to mean something by the time we reach the end of this reading. My name is Elena, and today I'm not just going to tell you that it's going to be okay, because I know that's not enough anymore. And honestly, you deserve better than that. Today I'm going to show you specifically what has been happening beneath the surface of this season while you couldn't see it. What has been moving while everything looks still? What has been clearing while it felt like nothing was clearing? And I'm going to tell you exactly what the shift looks like when it starts arriving, so that when it begins to happen, you recognize it, instead of explaining it away or deciding you're being too hopeful or waiting for something bigger before you allow yourself to believe it. Let's get into the cards. The first card that came out of this deck is the Seven of Swords reversed. And this is exactly the card I needed to see in this first position, because it tells me everything I need to know about what this season has actually been underneath the surface of it. The Seven of Swords upright is the card of someone getting away with something, someone operating behind the scenes in a way that isn't fully honest, someone carrying out a plan quietly, in the background, in the dark, that you were never supposed to be aware of. A strategy being run carefully designed to produce an outcome that benefits them and does not benefit you. Reversed, that plan is unraveling. The thing being done in the dark is beginning to come into the light. The thing that was supposed to work against you is starting to fall apart at the seams. Because things built on dishonesty always eventually do. They always collapse under their own weight, because they have nothing real underneath them holding them up. And eventually, that absence of foundation catches up with everything sitting on top of it. I want to be specific here, because I think you deserve specific today rather than vague. You have been living in vague for long enough, and vague has not served you. There has been something working against you in this season. Maybe it was a person, someone who was presenting themselves as being in your corner while quietly doing something else entirely. Someone who wanted a particular outcome for themselves and positioned things in a way that made your path harder than it needed to be without you fully understanding why things kept being harder than they should have been. Someone who smiled at you and worked against you simultaneously. Because that is what people who feel genuinely threatened by what you carry sometimes do. They keep you close so they can manage you, and they work against you at the same time, and they do it so quietly and so carefully that you spend a long time confused about why the results aren't matching the effort. Or maybe it wasn't a person. Maybe it was a system, a set of circumstances that was genuinely arranged in a way that was not fair to someone like you. Sometimes the game is rigged not by one individual, but by a whole structure of things that were never designed to produce outcomes that people like you deserve. And in that situation, you can do everything right and still find yourself wondering why it isn't adding up, because the math itself has been interfered with from the outside. Either way, and this is what the Seven of Swords reversed is confirming clearly, you were not imagining it. You were not paranoid. You were not failing because something was wrong with you, or because you weren't trying hard enough, or because you didn't deserve what you were working toward. Something was genuinely working against the outcome that was rightfully yours. And now it is collapsing. The reversal of this card tells me the plan that was supposed to keep you stuck, keep you small, keep you circling the same place without arriving anywhere, that plan is falling apart right now. The people who thought they had this figured out are beginning to see that they don't. And you are going to keep moving forward while they figure out what went wrong with their strategy. The second card is the Five of Wands reversed. This card sits in the position of what has been happening beneath the surface while you've been in the waiting room, and I want to take real time with this one, because I think this is where the most important part of the answer lives, and it's the part that most readings skip over entirely. The Five of Wands upright is conflict, noise, multiple things pushing against each other at once, competing forces creating friction and confusion, and a kind of chaos that makes clean forward movement almost impossible. When you're in Five of Wands energy, everything feels like it takes twice the effort it should, because you're pushing against resistance on multiple sides at once. Reversed, that energy is settling. The conflict is dying down. The resistance is softening. And what Spirit is showing me through this card in this specific position is something that I think is genuinely going to reframe this entire season for you once you really hear it. The reason this period has felt like nothing was happening is because the most important things that needed to happen were happening somewhere you couldn't see. When we are in a waiting season, we tend to evaluate whether things are moving based on what we can observe on the surface. What changes visibly in our circumstances? What shifts in the things we can point to? But the Five of Wands reversed is telling me that while the surface looked completely still, while the waiting room felt exactly like a waiting room with no visible movement and no news coming through, underneath that stillness, things were being untangled. Knots that had been in place for a long time were slowly being worked loose. Obstacles that were sitting between you and where you were going were quietly being cleared away one by one. Arrangements that needed to fall apart before the right thing could come together were in the process of falling apart, even though you had no way of seeing that from where you were sitting. Think about it this way. Imagine you are sitting in traffic, the heavy kind where you genuinely cannot see ahead, where you don't know what caused it or how far it stretches or how long it has been sitting there, and you have no way of finding out. You're just in it, stopped. And the temptation when you're in that situation is to start interpreting the stillness as something permanently wrong with the road, to start wondering if this is just what the road is now and it's never going to move again. But somewhere ahead of you, miles up the highway, the thing that was blocking everything has already been cleared. The road is open. Traffic ahead of you has already started moving. You just can't see that yet. because you're still in the section where it looks like nothing has changed. But you are minutes away from things beginning to flow, and from inside the traffic, you will have had absolutely no warning that it was about to happen. That is precisely where you are right now. The road ahead is clear. You are about to start moving, and it is going to look sudden from the outside, even though nothing about it is sudden. It has been building toward this the entire time you've been sitting still. The third card is the Wheel of Fortune. And I want to be honest with you about what I felt when this card came out, because I think honesty matters more than performance. When the Wheel of Fortune appeared in this position in this reading, after everything I had already seen in the first two cards, I felt something in the energy of this reading settle in a way that I want to try to describe to you accurately. It wasn't excitement exactly. It was more like recognition, like something clicking into place, like the full picture becoming clear all at once. The Wheel of Fortune is the card of cycles turning, of what has been low coming back up, of what felt permanent and fixed and never going to change, revealing itself to actually be a season with a beginning and a middle and an end that is now arriving. And in the context of everything we have looked at so far, the plan that is unraveling, the conflict that is dying down beneath the surface, the road that is already clear ahead, the Wheel of Fortune appearing now, is the universe itself confirming that the turn is not something that is going to happen eventually if you are patient enough and good enough and keep doing the right things long enough. It is happening right now. The wheel is already in motion. The cycle is already in the process of completing its turn. You are inside the shift, even though you cannot fully feel it yet. And here is the thing about the Wheel of Fortune that I need you to really sit with, because I genuinely believe it is the most important thing I will say in this entire reading. This card does not turn for people who gave up before the turn. It does not complete its cycle for people who decided the wait was unreasonable and walked away 3 months before the tide changed. The Wheel of Fortune turns for the people who stayed in the game when the game was rigged against them, who kept their character when losing their character would have been completely understandable given what they were dealing with, who kept showing up for something they couldn't see yet, because something below logic, something below evidence, something deep in the instinctive part of them just kept saying, "This is real, keep going, do not stop here." That is who this card belongs to. And that is exactly who you have been throughout this entire season. Now I want to give you something practical, something you can actually use. Because I think one of the most frustrating things about a timing reading is being told that something is shifting without being told what the shift looks like when it starts. So, I am going to tell you exactly what to watch for. 3 specific things, so that when they begin to happen, you recognize them for what they are instead of explaining them away. Before I do that, if you want to go even deeper into your specific situation, into what the timing looks like for you personally, and what the shift looks like in your specific circumstances rather than the collective energy of this reading, I do private email readings, and the link is in the description below. That is the space where we get into the details of what you are actually navigating. Reach out if that feels right for you. The first sign that the shift has begun is going to be a feeling before it is a fact. Something in your body, in your gut, in your chest, in that quiet, instinctive place where you actually know things before you have any evidence to support knowing them, is going to start to settle. The low-grade background anxiety that has been running underneath everything during this season. That constant quiet hum of not yet and what if and is this ever actually going to move is going to get quieter. Not because you decided to think more positively or because you did something to manufacture the feeling. It will get quieter because something underneath the surface is genuinely resolving, and your nervous system is going to detect that resolution before your physical circumstances have had time to reflect it visibly. Your body will know first. That is not wishful thinking when it happens. That is your instincts reading something real that just hasn't made it to the surface yet. Pay attention to that settling. When it starts happening, do not dismiss it. Do not talk yourself out of it. It is information. The second sign is something unexpected arriving from a direction you were not watching. I say this because in readings about timing and shifts, I consistently see the thing people have been waiting for arrive from the side rather than from the front. Not through the door you have been standing in front of watching and waiting. Through a window you forgot was even there. A conversation with someone you had not been thinking about in connection with what you've been hoping for. An opportunity that comes from a direction you had already mentally written off as not relevant. A development in a situation you thought was completely finished and closed. A connection that shows up through a channel that doesn't make immediate logical sense. When something arrives unexpectedly from a direction you weren't focused on, that is the beginning. That is the wheel completing its first visible turn. Do not dismiss it because it didn't come through the channel you were expecting. Let it in. It is supposed to look like this. The third sign is a sudden moment of clarity about something that has been confusing you for a long time. Something that hasn't made sense. A situation you couldn't figure out. A person's behavior you couldn't understand. A pattern you kept bumping into without being able to see why is going to suddenly make sense. Not necessarily because dramatic new information arrives. Sometimes it's simply that the fog that has been sitting around something lifts all at once, and you can see it clearly from exactly where you've been standing the whole time. And when that clarity moment comes, I need you to trust it completely. Don't second guess it. Don't give whatever it is the benefit of the doubt you don't actually have just because seeing clearly is uncomfortable or inconvenient. That moment of vision is the wheel giving you your perception back. It is accurate. Receive it and act from it. The fourth card is the Sun. And I want to stay here for a while because I think this card deserves more than a quick paragraph and a hopeful sentence. The Sun in the position of what the shift looks like when it fully arrives is one of the most honest answers tarot can give you. The Sun is not a complicated card. It doesn't speak in layers or symbols that need decoding. It says exactly what it means, and it means exactly what it says. Warmth, light, the feeling of something finally going right in a way that you don't immediately have to brace against. The feeling of waking up and your first thought being something light instead of something heavy. The feeling of looking around at your actual life, not the life you're hoping for someday, your actual current life, and recognizing that what is present in it now is actually, genuinely what you were asking for. Not a consolation version of it. Not a we couldn't quite get there, so here's something close version. The real thing. What you actually meant when you were hoping. And the quality of what the Sun is describing here matters enormously, so I want to be very precise about it. There is a real difference between a moment going well and a season going well. A moment can be an anomaly. A moment can be a fluke that you enjoy carefully while waiting for it to end. The Sun is not describing a moment. The Sun is describing a season, a sustained, real, warm, stable period where things that have been consistently withheld from you start consistently arriving. Where the turning of the wheel means something changes not once and then stops, but across the whole landscape of your daily life over a period of weeks and months. Where you notice after a while that things have just been better, not perfect. I am not promising you perfect, because perfect is not a real thing that exists. And I do not deal in things that aren't real. But genuinely, warmly, solidly, sustainably better in a way that starts to feel like the new normal instead of the exception. What I also want to say about the Sun card is something that not many readings address, and I think it's important for where you are. After a long waiting season, there's often a reflex to hold good things lightly when they finally arrive. To let yourself enjoy them, but keep one part of yourself back just in case. To be grateful, but cautious. To receive the warmth, but keep your coat on. Because you've been cold for so long that you don't fully trust that the temperature has actually changed. The Sun card is specifically directly asking you not to do that this time, to actually let what is coming land fully, to take the coat off, to receive this season with both hands completely open instead of one hand open and one hand hovering near the exit. Because you earned this. Not some of it, all of it. And receiving it fully and without reservation is not setting yourself up to be hurt. It is what you are supposed to do with something that actually belongs to you. The fifth and final card is the Ace of Pentacles. And I love that this card closed out the spread because it answers the question I know is sitting in the back of some of your minds, which is, but what does the shift actually look like in my real life? In the physical, practical, day-to-day, actual reality of what I'm living on the ground. Not just energetically, not just emotionally, in real life. The Ace of Pentacles is a new beginning in the material world, in the concrete, visible, tangible reality of your actual daily circumstances. Something you can point to, something you can feel, something that changes what your life looks like, not just inside, but outside in the world, where other people can see it too. And for different people watching this, that looks like different things, because this is a collective reading and I want to honor that. For some of you, this is financial, a door opening that genuinely changes what is possible in practical terms. A resource arriving that removes a constraint that has been sitting on your life and limiting your options for too long. For some of you, this is a situation solidifying into something real, a relationship becoming official and grounded, a career shift becoming concrete, a living situation changing into something that actually feels like yours. For some of you, it is multiple things arriving in the same period, because the Ace of Pentacles is not a small card. It comes with both hands full, and it comes with the energy of a genuine new chapter, not a slightly improved version of the chapter you've been in. A new one. What I keep seeing as I hold this card is the image of a seed and the right soil. You have been carrying a seed throughout this entire season, through every hard moment, through every moment where you questioned whether any of this made sense, through all the waiting and the exhaustion, and the moments where giving up would have been the logical response, you kept carrying this seed. You didn't drop it. You didn't throw it down in frustration, even when the frustration was completely justified. And the reason it hasn't grown yet is not because the seed is flawed. The seed is exactly right. The reason it hasn't grown is because the conditions around you were not ready to receive it. The interference from the Seven of Swords, the friction from the Five of Wands, the circumstances that were working against the outcome you deserved, all of that was creating conditions that could not support what you're carrying, no matter how good the seed was. But those conditions are changing right now. The soil is shifting. And when the Ace of Pentacles arrives in a reading after the Wheel of Fortune and the Sun, it is telling me that what you have been holding is about to go into ground that can finally actually grow it. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Quick confirmations before the close. I'm getting a strong J and a very clear M in this energy. Names coming through: Jade, Michael, Luna, Ryan. Astrology, heavy Taurus energy running through this entire reading, which tracks completely with everything we've looked at. Taurus is the sign that holds on, that has roots that go so much deeper than people realize from the outside. That outlasts every difficult season, not because they are unaffected, but because endurance is not something they practice it is something they simply are. Capricorn is also strongly present, the one who does the work quietly, without needing anyone to witness it or validate it, who builds slowly and carefully, and builds things that last because they were never interested in shortcuts. And a thread of Sagittarius, the energy of someone who keeps moving forward even without a clear map, because the moving itself is part of how they find their way. If any of that resonated in your body, this reading found the right person. Here is what I want to leave you with. And I am going to say it plainly, because I think you deserve plain right now more than you deserve anything poetic or beautifully wrapped. The game was rigged. I'm not going to soften that or find a more comfortable way to say it, because I think you already knew it on some level, and having someone finally just confirm it clearly actually matters. Something or someone worked against the outcome you deserved in this season. The deck was stacked in a way that was not fair and was not a reflection of your worth and was not something you caused. And you played the game anyway. You showed up to a rigged game every single day, and you played it with everything you had, and you kept your integrity while you were playing it, even when keeping your integrity cost you something real. That is not a small thing. That is the whole reason the wheel is turning in your direction right now, instead of continuing to sit still. The universe does not turn the wheel for people who compromise themselves trying to win a rigged game. It turns the wheel for people who refuse to, who stayed true to what they actually are, even when what they actually are was being used against them, who kept the light on inside when everything on the outside was designed to make them put it out. You outlasted what was designed to break you. You stayed real in a season that was trying to make you into something smaller and harder and less than what you came in as. You kept going when stopping would have been completely understandable. And now the people who thought they had this all figured out, who were certain they knew how this was going to end, are standing there watching you win a game they were absolutely certain they had already decided the outcome of. You are not at the end of this journey, but you are at the turn. And the turn is everything. I'm Elena. Keep going.